Episode 1: The Secret Dungeon. 10 years ago, gates began to randomly appear all over the world, connecting to mysterious and dangerous places known as dungeons. 10 years ago, gates began to randomly appear all over the world, connecting to mysterious and dangerous places known as dungeons. In response to these new threats, humanity's best and brightest began to awaken with extraordinary powers and abilities. These people became known as hunters, capable of slaying terrifying monsters and reclaiming lost treasures. And each hunter was ranked according to their power from the highest S rank to the lowest E rank. But wait, hold it right there. This isn't a shonen anime. Oh no, siree. This is a dark adult fantasy with tons of gore, action, and suspense. And our story begins with a man named Sun Jinwoo, an E-rank hunter, the lowest of the low, barely clinging to his position as a hunter. Because if you ask anyone in the Hunter Association about him, they'll probably say something along the lines of, that guy. Yeah, he's one of the worst hunters I know. Actually, scratch that. Worst is putting it lightly. It's pathetic. That guy has barely survived several dungeon raids, and the guy always needs saving. I can't believe that guy's still alive, actually, but I guess he is. Basically, Jinwoo is known throughout the Hunter Association as one of the weakest hunters that barely clings on to his status as a hunter. And if you ask why someone like this would even want to be a hunter, well, the answer is simple. Woo is trying to earn money to pay for his mom's hospital bills and to take care of his little sister. So every day he goes out into dungeons to try to make enough money to help his family. But it's really hard when you're an E-rank hunter. So one day Jinwoo decides to team up with a few other hunters and head out to what should be a pretty routine dungeon. Now the dungeon itself looks like your typical fantasy dungeon. There's some basic traps, maybe a troll or two, and a few goblins. And while there are definitely some tougher enemies, overall it shouldn't be too bad, especially since most of the people going in are mid to low-ranking hunters looking for some easy loot. And speaking of people, we have 5 people going into this dungeon. First off, we got our main protagonist, Sun Jinwoo. Next to him is the one who organized this raid, Gogun, a C-rank hunter. Then we got Jang Myeonhwan, a low-ranking hunter just like Jinwoo, but a bit stronger. Choi Jongin, an S-rank hunter, basically the strongest person in this entire raid. And lastly, there's Li Huan, a B-rank hunter. A fun fact, Myeonhwan and Jinwoo were in the same raid where they met Choi Jongin, and that didn't go so well. You see, back then, Jongin had been severely injured and was near death. But thanks to Myeonhwan and Jinwoo, they managed to save his life. But ever since then, Jongin has held a grudge against them, even threatening to kill them on more than one occasion. But after hearing that this dungeon was supposedly easy, he decided to tag along. Anyway, the team quickly makes their way through the dungeon, and after a few fights, they finally reach the end. Now, at first glance, the final room doesn't look like much. It's just a giant room with a treasure chest, some loot, and nothing else. But Jinwoo remembers seeing something weird earlier. You see, when he looked at the dungeon map, he saw that this final room should have been the dungeon's final boss chamber. But the thing is, they hadn't fought the dungeon boss yet. And if this is the final room, then where could the boss possibly be? Well, they don't have to wait long to find out, because suddenly the floor beneath them collapses and a giant worm-like monster emerges from the ground. Thankfully, the team is prepared, and after a quick strategy meeting, they charge forward and begin to attack. The battle is long and tough, but in the end, they manage to defeat the worm and claim their prize. Now you'd think that this would be the end of the episode, but it's not. In fact, the best is yet to come, because after the battle, Jinwoo notices a secret door in the room which wasn't shown on the dungeon map at all. It had no mana signature and seemed completely inconspicuous. And after searching the room, they found a key which opened the door. And beyond the door was another room. Now initially, everyone wanted to ignore it, but after much debate, they decided to check it out. Mostly because they were all greedy and wanted more loot. And so, without any hesitation, they barge into the room, only to find themselves in a massive chamber filled with gigantic statues and an altar in the center. Now at first glance it looked beautiful and peaceful, but there was something eerie about the statues. They were all menacing and seemed to be staring at whoever entered the room. But regardless, the team split up and began searching the room for anything valuable, except for Jinwoo, who couldn't help but feel a sense of dread. Something about this place was giving him the creeps. But before he could do anything about it, the doors behind them slammed shut, and an ominous silence fell over the room. Then suddenly the commandments began to speak. Only those who follow the commandments shall pass. Those who violate the commandments shall die. And as they read the commandments, the statues began to glow red, and the doors behind them began to crumble away. It didn't take long for everyone to realize what was happening. The statues, they're coming alive, screamed one of the hunters. And sure enough, one of the statues began to move, and soon enough, the rest followed. The hunters scattered and tried to attack, but the statues were fast and strong, and before long, several of the hunters had been slaughtered. And as the chaos ensued, Jinwoo desperately tried to figure out what the commandments said. He had to come up with a plan, and fast, if he wanted to survive. Anyone who runs counterclockwise around the room 3 times will die. Anyone who kneels before the commandments will live. Anyone who touches the altar will turn to stone. Anyone who attacks the commandments will die. Anyone who does not kneel when night falls will die. As Jinwoo deciphered each commandment, he helped the other hunters avoid the statues and try to stay alive. With his leadership and quick thinking, they managed to survive the first wave of attacks. But the battle was far from over. As the clock struck midnight, things took a turn for the worse. All of the statues began to glow red, and the surviving hunters panicked. But Jinwoo remained calm and focused. Using his knowledge of the commandments, he guided the surviving hunters around the room, dodging the statues and staying out of their reach. Meanwhile, the statues continued their relentless assault, crashing into the pillars and sending rocks flying everywhere. Despite their best efforts, more and more hunters fell victim to the statues, and one by one they were picked off until only a few remained. With the situation becoming increasingly desperate, Jinwoo knew he had to do something drastic. He needed to buy the remaining hunters some time so they could regroup and come up with a plan. Without hesitation, he charged towards the nearest statue, distracting it and taking the full force of its attack. As the statue smashed into him, knocking him to the ground, Jinwoo felt searing pain throughout his body. But he pushed through the agony, knowing that this was his chance to help the others. With the statue's attention diverted, the remaining hunters scrambled to safety, taking cover behind the massive pillars that lined the room. Seizing the opportunity, Jinwoo quickly got back to his feet and raced around the room, desperately trying to figure out a way to break the curse. He had to find a way to stop the statues and free them from the temple's grasp. As the minutes ticked by, Jinwoo's hope began to dwindle. The situation seemed hopeless, and he feared that it might be the end for them all. Suddenly, he remembered the commandments. He had read them carefully, trying to find a loophole, a weakness, anything that could give them an advantage. And then he saw it. Anyone who offers their life to the temple shall be granted immortality. In a flash of inspiration, Jinwoo realized that this could be their salvation. If he sacrificed himself, he could break the curse and free the others from the temple's grasp. Without hesitation, Jinwoo charged towards the altar, bracing himself for the ultimate test. As he stepped onto the altar, a surge of energy coursed through his body, and the statues roared in anger, sensing the imminent disruption of their eternal slumber. With a final cry, Jinwoo collapsed, his body crushed under the weight of the closest statue. As darkness enveloped him, Jinwoo felt a strange sensation, a feeling of his consciousness being pulled into a different realm. And as he lost consciousness, a strange screen appeared before his eyes. It was unlike anything he had ever seen before, filled with words and symbols that seemed to form a language of their own. Suddenly, everything went black. Well, folks, that's the end of part 1. What did you think? Was it good? Was it bad? Let me know in the comments below. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe so you never miss another video. Till next time, take care.